Hello everyone, my name's Misbah. Welcome back to another video. So this video is in a few parts because I did a few different things this week. One of the things I did was go to Wales for a couple of days. I'll share the footage from the beach, the beaches that I visited in next Friday's video. But on the way to Wales, I stopped at Bodnant Gardens. I visited Bodnant in May to see the Laburnum Arch, so I've got a separate video about that. But this time I decided to walk in the woodland area and to see the stream where the hydrangeas were in bloom. I was told at the visitors centre that the 2018 film of The Secret Garden, some of the scenes had been shot in Bodnant, and so I wanted to see some of the places where they'd actually filmed there. And then that inspired me to come back and read the book The Secret Garden. I read it as a child. It was written in 1911 by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I remember I really loved it as a child, and I'll talk about it now. So it's the story of a young girl called Mary Lennox. She starts her life in India. So her parents live in India and her mother is a socialite who neglects Mary and leaves Mary to her Indian servants. Mary is a petulant, spoilt, a horrible child. There's an outbreak of cholera and her parents die, and then Mary is sent to live in England. She moves into the mansion of her uncle, and her uncle goes off on his travels. So again, Mary is looked after by servants, this time English servants. And one of the relations of her servant is a boy called Dickon. And Mary makes friends with Dickon, and then together in the grounds of this mansion, they find a secret garden that's hidden away. It's a walled garden, it's locked, and when they break into the garden, they see that it's been neglected and it's overgrown. So they decide to work on the garden and to restore it. Then later in the story, Mary finds that there's another child living in the mansion, a young boy called Colin. He is an invalid, so he's sickly, he never leaves his bed and he never goes outside. And Colin is Mary's cousin, so Mary's uncle has abandoned Colin. Colin's mother died giving birth, and so again Colin is a little bit like Mary. He's neglected and just left to be cared for by servants. So Mary and Dickon somehow put Colin in a chair and smuggle him out, take him to the garden. Gradually, the peace and the tranquility of nature and the beauty of the garden has this effect on them, and it actually heals them. And I think the book is really about the transformation of Mary from being this spoilt, sullen child to being a gentle, kind person. And in the end, it's a book about friendship. So it's a little bit like a love triangle, but for friendship, because Mary adores Dickon, and Colin's a little bit jealous of Mary's friendship with Dickon, and Colin really likes Mary. And so it's a book, it's not a romantic book, but it's a book about friendship, and it has some beautiful descriptions of nature, and in a way the garden is like a mother to Mary and to Colin. The garden gives them that sort of peace and that calm that they would have had if they'd been cared for by a mother. So from that point of view, it's a lovely book to read. However, reading it again as an adult, so I read it ready for this video, I was struck with how much racism there was in the book. At the start of the book, Mary is looked after by these servants, and she's quite horrible to them. And the way that the servants are described, it's a very racist attitude. When she comes to England, one of these servants said that she expected Mary to have been Indian, and Mary is really insulted. How dare she think that she could be Indian? They're not sort of considered people, they're considered just people who would obey you, but not real people, but just people who are there to serve you. So I know that the book was written over 100 years ago, And I know that something that's written 100 years ago can't be looked at with the same eyes as books that are written today. And so I can understand that. And to me, I can still read the book and see what's good about the book, and I can enjoy the beauty in the book. But I could also understand if somebody else reading the book couldn't appreciate the book, or they couldn't enjoy it because of this racism there. So to me, I read the book for the prose, for the beautiful language, and for the story. And I also read it as a historical document. So it tells us what life was like then, what people's attitudes were like then, and how far we've come, and what a good thing it is that we have come this far and we don't have those attitudes now. So that's how I feel about the book. So next I will share with you some scenes from Bodnant Gardens. So welcome back. I'm just having some apple crumble. You can have it hot or cold with ice cream or with custard. I'm just having it on its own, and it's quite delicious. It's such a simple recipe, and I'll share that with you. And I always put cinnamon on the top when I'm baking it, and then the whole kitchen smells it's full of cinnamon and really sort of festive. So I'll share that really easy recipe with you, and then I'll finish my video by showing you a visit I made to the Walker Art Gallery. There was an exhibition on of the Tudor Dynasty, so I enjoyed that. There were paintings by the artist Holbein, and there was lots of historical information as well. So I've shared a little bit of my visit with you. So thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you next week. In this part of my video, I thought I would share with you my visit to the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. I saw the Tudor Exhibition. I'll go through what I learned. So in the 15th century, England had been torn apart by a civil war which lasted for 30 years. Two rival families, Lancaster and York, fought for the crown. The victor was Henry Tudor, crowned Henry VII, and so began the Tudor Dynasty. His son, Henry VIII, knew he needed a male heir. He was first married to Catherine of Aragon, and they had many children, but they all died in infancy except one daughter, Mary. Henry felt his marriage was cursed. He wanted to divorce Catherine, so he broke away from the Catholic Church and England became officially Protestant. Next, he married Anne Boleyn, a noblewoman, and she produced a daughter, Elizabeth. 3 years later, Henry had Anne tried for adultery and treason. After Anne was beheaded, days later he married Jane Seymour, his third wife. She produced a male heir, Edward, but she died in childbirth. Henry then agreed to an arranged marriage to a German princess, but when they met, there was no chemistry and the marriage was annulled. She lived in his royal palace as a beloved sister. This left Henry free to marry a young and attractive teenage bride, Catherine Howard, but Catherine was found to be guilty of adultery and beheaded. Henry found peace finally with his sixth wife, Catherine Parr. She was a good mother to Mary, Elizabeth and Edward, and she outlived Henry. There is a rhyme to remember the order: divorced, beheaded, died; divorced, beheaded, survived. Henry's death meant that a very young Edward was crowned king. He was sickly and only lived a few years. Next came his sister, Mary Tudor. She wanted revenge for her mother, and she was determined to return England back to the Catholic Church. She beheaded so many opponents that she was nicknamed Bloody Mary. She died childless, and the crown was passed to Elizabeth. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years, and it was a golden age for England. She was the greatest Tudor. She had her rivals, however, as some believed her to be illegitimate. They supported her cousin, a Scottish queen, Mary, Queen of Scots. Elizabeth was so threatened by Mary that she had her imprisoned and then later executed. Elizabeth never married, and ironically she named Mary's son her successor. On her death, he became king of both Scotland and England, and the Tudor dynasty ended.